I've got a little confession to make to you this morning. They might not be fashionable, but I really love fishing canals. In my eyes, you're looking at a network of over 2,000 miles of untapped fishing. You could fish just about any method and catch almost any species of freshwater fish here. Today we're on the Basingstoke Canal and we're going to be looking to catch a mixed bag on the pole. Okay, we've got pretty much a perfect canal peg here. I've picked this one because it's got a good array of features. We've got a lovely overhanging tree on the far bank that looks like it should hold some fish. We've got just plumbed up, shelves away at sort of 4 meters, so I'll also try a line there. Canal fishing is about keeping your options open a lot of the time, and if we want to catch a variety of species, we've got to look at a few different options. So we've got a variety of baits. I'm going to try a little silverfish line here first with some pinkies, but we're also going to try a bit of hemp seed, see if we can pick up some better roach. And last but not least, we have our bonus fish line over the other side where I'll be putting in some baits like worms, corn, just see if we can pick out a decent something bigger later on. Let's get cracking. The name of the game with a lot of canal fishing, especially if we're just looking to get bites, is to aim for a fine presentation. These fish are not desperately starving hungry. They weren't chucked in here last week and fed a load of pellets. They could survive quite happily enough without our bait. So we're gonna start fairly cute, because if we got our presentation right, fish fairly fine, we should get bites from the off, I'm hoping. So we've got a float that takes 1/3 of a gram there, and this is a slow sinking rig. This is what I call my keep out of mischief rig. In other words, while I let my big fish lines develop, I'll just keep flicking pinkies and some sloppy ground bait and just get some bites early on while the other lines settle, and it keeps me distracted anyway. And as well as the silverfish lines, my final attack will be this bonus fish rig. You can see it's got a thicker tip to the float, which will accommodate baits like, say, half a red worm or a piece of corn. And we'll go over, we won't fish it immediately, but after an hour or two, once things have settled, we'll have a look across and see if we can get our hands on something a little bigger. Okay, so we've plumbed up the depth in our swim, we've assessed our options, and now it's time to kick off with a bit of feed. And the name of the game with canal fishing is not to go crazy, but just to keep a little bit going in. Little and often is the golden rule. So we're going to start just by taking a little nugget of ground bait and a few pinkies, and popping it down just down the near shelf right here. And we're fishing about 4 or 5 meters out. I'm also going to keep trickling a little bit of hemp in a little further out, and I'll also be putting in some bait on the far line, less often perhaps, but we'll start with 6 or so chopped worms, and we'll keep just topping that up every now and again. But our idea is to try and get off the mark on this near side before moving over a bit later and seeing if we can try a bigger bait for a slightly bigger fish. there's another little roach. Literally non-stop at the moment. They just keep on coming. This is good fun. Everyone's so obsessed with big fish these days, but I actually do love a bit of tiddler bashing. This is, I said we might catch anything in this canal, and just proved it true. These things are a menace. Well, I say a menace, but they're kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time. This is also the reason that there are lots of big perch and chub in a lot of our canals now. It's an evil thing. Yeah. Now comes the interesting part, getting the hook off it. We're getting a bit of boat traffic today, but the way I see it, the fish are really used to boats here, and I always get the feeling that boats bother anglers more than they bother fish, and I'm actually getting nearly getting a bite right now, and the guys come straight through the swim, so draw your own conclusions, but I don't think boats spoil the fishing too badly on canals. There we are, just gone over for the chopped worm line. We've given it a good 2.5 hours or so. The good news is that there are no crayfish over there. Not huge perch, but where there's one there could be more, and maybe 1 or 2 bigger ones. So, one thing you will notice when you're fishing is how often you get that indication, you get that bite virtually 2 or 3 seconds after the float has properly settled, or just as it's on the way down. And one thing you can do which will instantly get you more bites on the cut is just to keep working the bait. I don't mean continually lift it and drop it all the time, but just every few seconds. If you haven't had a bite, just lift the pole tip gently, let the rig settle again. Every time you do that, you're drawing attention to your bait. The last few inches are falling through the water again. And yeah, it's a really good trick. And if you watch any good canal matchman, you'll notice that's one big difference between what they do and what the rest do. They're always working their bait, doing something. It works especially well with baits like worm. You don't need to do anything dramatic, just give it a gentle lift and let it settle again. You should pay particular attention to the length of line between the tip of your float and the end of the pole. And the reason for that is we want to be able to react quickly and be in direct contact with the fish. So if you find that you're missing bites, it's probably going to be a good idea to shorten that a bit. But it's normally a happy medium. And as you see, I've got something like in the region of 18 inches there at the moment, which is probably optimum. The one time I'd go with a longer gap is perhaps when the water's clear, which isn't so much today, but sometimes when the canal is very clear in the winter, I'll go with longer, just so that I can swing the rig further out and not have the pole waving around over the fish's heads. But play it by ear, but be prepared to shorten if you're missing bites. We plumbed the depth earlier, and it's a really good idea to keep tabs on that, so that should you go over depth or come up in the water, you remember where you started off. And ideally I like to start with the bait just scraping the bottom. And these little bands are a great idea. It's just a little plastic sleeve that goes over your pole. You can buy them. Otherwise you can use Tipex or a correction fluid. It's just a really good idea to keep tabs on where your float is, so that if I do push it over depth because the tow increases or I fish up in the water, I know where to come back to. Another tip I'm going to quickly give you is about the size of your bait. I mean, obviously we've had some great biter chuck fishing here, fishing single or double maggot or even pinkies, but when you want something a bit bigger, it can pay to scale up. Corn is a good alternative, casters, worms, but if all you've got is maggots, actually a very good bait is 3 or even 4 or a whole bunch of maggots. And quite often when I'm getting pestered by tiny little fish, it's a case of switching that 18 or 20 for a size 12 or even a 10 and going, as we've got here, up to a little bunch of maggots. And we've got 4 there. We won't get as many bites, but hopefully the next bite will be something decent. Slightly better roach, probably not a netter, but whoops, probably should have been a netter. Better fish here. Looks like a nice perch. Yep, he's just come up. We've been waiting a while for our bonus. We've just switched to larger maggots rather than the little pinkies. And that looks like a netter to me. Very nice. Now again, it's just no monster. It's probably the best perch we've had so far. Really pulled the elastic. Convinced it was bigger, but there we go. Lovely looking fish. Not fantastically big, but that fish has probably never seen a hook. It's just what it's all about. They don't need to be big to be a heck of a lot of fun. Nice roach there in the net. We're still not quite got our big match-winning bonus fish, but hey, never mind. These are really well worth catching. We've got some really nice roach, and that's one of the better ones today. Well, there we are, the spoils of a perfect lazy afternoon on the Basingstoke Canal. I mean, considering we've had a short session in, you know, the least promising bit of the day, we've had tons of bites. And anyone who can stand there and tell you that the canals have no fishing, just take a look at the net. It's been great fun. We didn't really have our bonus fish in the end, but I mean, when you're something like this, they're all a bonus, I think. Good morning. Well, it's great fun sitting on a canal on a sunny afternoon and catching lots of small fish, but if you want something a bit bigger to really fill the net, it's often a good idea to get up at the crack of dawn, which is why we're here on the Grand Western Canal today, slightly bleary-eyed, and we're after something bigger, which could be a bream or a tench here. Well, there we are, the early start has paid off. It's a beautiful tench. You have a really ridiculously positive bite, a couple of bits of corn. Yeah, fantastic looking fish. You don't often catch those in the middle of the day, so that's a great start. there we are. It's mid-morning by now, the sun's coming up and the bites have dried up, but never mind, it's been really worth getting up early this morning. These are absolutely beautiful canal tench. In fact, you wouldn't find better looking tench anywhere. So yeah, well worth setting the alarm early if you want to get your hands on some of these bigger fish in your canal.